The Philippines, like any other developing nation, faces a critical issue when it comes to the wealth gap. This, in simpler terms, means that there is too much money going into the hands of the richest people in the nation, while only little money goes back to the poorest people. The Global Finance magazine in 2022 reported that the archipelago nation found that the top 1% of the population of the Philippines holds close to 17% of the share of the nation income, whereas the bottom 50%, which is around 55 million Filipinos, actually holds only a shorter share of what the 1% holds, at around 14.3%, a huge difference in the national income, as that same 1% is just around a million people. How could a million people hold far more wealth than over 55 million? This is the inequality issue that is currently plaguing the nation of the Philippines. This has indeed created a vast number of social and political issues, but not limited to it, as it also brings in environmental and education problems, which has likely created a domino effect of burdensome challenges for the government to face. One key issue is, as most likely, the poverty rate, an issue that is very much connected to inequality. After all, they do indeed belong to the bottom 50% of the wealth gap of the nation, to which the poverty rate has increased by a staggering number, especially after the economic crisis over the past years, to 23.7%, which means that there are 26 million Filipinos who are living in poverty today, higher than the poverty rate in 2018, yet this comes as a huge blow, not only because poverty incidence has increased recently, but also because there is a lack of wealth governing across the Philippines. Comparing the nation's economy of today, which stands at a GDP of close to 394 billion US dollars, and to 2018's GDP, where it had only 346 billion dollars, it should more than likely come to the thoughts of leaders that the Philippines' economy grew rapidly, yet we have seen a decline of poverty incidence. This, as we like to call it, is largely due to the inequality and perplexity of the nation of the Philippines. There really is a huge amount of money going into the pockets of the richest people, yet seemingly a small amount goes back to the bottom population. To further elaborate on how big this income inequality really is, we must take a look at the billionaires of the nation of the Philippines. According to a Forbes report in 2021, there is a huge number of Filipino billionaires on the list, with 22 billionaires as of that year, which the list goes on to have 50 total rich billionaires who have a net worth of over $200 million or more. There is a huge relation between how many billionaires a country has and its poverty rate. After all, if they do not provide enough incentive to their employees, it is more likely that the remaining income earned goes to their very own name. But to really see why these 22 billionaires are so important, we must compare them to a nation like Vietnam. The World Bank reported that the nation only has around 5% of its total population living today in poverty, a huge difference between the two nations. Yet its entire nominal gross domestic product, or GDP as referred to earlier, the term often used to denote the economic snapshot of one's country, is relatively almost the same for the Philippines and Vietnam. The Philippines is just ahead by a small margin, as it holds $394 billion worth of GDP, while Vietnam at around $362 billion. Not a huge margin for the entire economy, but there is indeed a huge margin in difference for the total inequality levels. This brings us back to that small list of 22 Filipino billionaires, around 20% poverty. In Vietnam, on the other hand, there are actually only 6 billionaires, and the richest known, Phan Nhật Vuong, the owner of the nation's largest private conglomerate known as Vingroup, is just worth $7.3 billion, whereas the richest in the Philippines is known as the Tsai family, who is worth over $16.6 billion. Should the Philippines, however, learn how to divide this wealth, either by many means such as increasing wage salary or leaning over to higher taxes on wealthier individuals versus lower income individuals, individuals is another conversation that needs to be addressed. Sure, it is possible to do all these, it more than likely will probably happen in the future. But when it in fact does happen, it might be quite too late. After all, some Filipino magnates have been found to have offshore wealth funds, whereas some were linked to the notorious Panama Papers, where they found that millions of rich people around the world, including Filipinos, have been using tax havens by opening offshore accounts. While legal, still ethically questionable. Should the government hike taxes on these people, there are going to be a lot of implications from then on. That is, however, still an opinion, as we may really not know what the motives of these billionaires want with their money. Moving on, the wealth gap between the richest and the bottom, as provided by various data, is not even the only key topic to understand. This data calculated, in fact, brings the entire population of the Philippines. But this data provisioned by international studies do not take a look at the economy of each region in the Philippines. Yes, we have a big inequality, but more so is the fact that there is even only one region in the Philippines that has engineered this entire thing. What is it? It's the gross domestic product of each region. By that we mean the national capital region known as Metro Manila. Metro Manila, unfortunately, as it is the economic engine of the Philippines, while that may indeed possess several upsides, it has still brought in these periods of inequality issues. We took public data from the Philippine Statistics Authority and found that in 2021, Metro Manila will hold a nominal GDP of over $110 million, or around 6.1 trillion pesos, as currencies have now been fluctuating as of late. This means that Metro Manila alone, the regional economic driver, a very tiny part of the geographical landscape of the Philippines, holds 32.3% of the entire nation's economy. So how does Metro Manila truly incinerate the entire inequality issue? Well, as simple as it is, because this region alone accounts for a huge sum of the entire economy, everybody and more of the government spending goes into this region, making only one side of the population richer. If we even take a look at the GDP per capita data, which is a measure of how much economic output per person holds, Metro Manila has around $8,000 or 440,000 pesos in GDP per capita. This if we compared it to other big regions, such as Central Luzon or Central Visayas, who both has only a per capita of around $3,000, far from Metro Manila. Yet the two regions are very close to one another's population. This has then brought in more problems and issues that go along with it, such as provinces living individuals flocking to the capital to seek better opportunities, which further brought in more issues such as congestion and squatting. Had the government, on the other hand, initiated a more fluid economy that does not aim at just one region, it is more than likely that we think the nation of the Philippines will have a better relative ratio of inequality. Finally, we of course did not include several more key data points that have been underlying reasons why there is a huge inequality issue in the Philippines. Other complex issues are related to brain drain, educational reforms, a lack of foreign demand, and investments, and so on. So far, however, we have done our best to provide you with the concerning issues that are the largest drivers of this generation's problems. To fix this, however, as we always think it is, will be rather difficult. First of all, we denoted that if the government's initiative was to bring equality, they would have to go through a huge hurdle, such as fixing income gaps with the entire population and then presumably changing tax rates. But these all come with numerous consequences, and more than likely, the government will be careful if these things could in fact impact the economy negatively if they pursue the wrong strategies. If the country, on the other hand, does become one day miraculously successful in finding a more even and equal nation, then it is to our best belief that the economic engine will grow far more, as issues that lead to this inequality would more than likely go down. After all, they too are at large when it comes to burdening the people. Anyway, what do you think?